Greetings everyone, welcome back to Blade Bias, and as I record this, not as you watch this, it is officially time to start packing for Blade Show. But before I do that, I had to figure out what I was going to record while I'm at Blade Show. And while I don't think I'm going to be able to make as many uploads to cover the show as I have in past years, there was one Blade Show where I literally pre-recorded a month of videos that I was able to coast off of. Today I had a new idea. A little proof of concept for something that I think, depending on how this goes, I might want to turn into a series of sorts, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, or even monthly, and whether the format stays in this head-mounted area or not. I was thinking that a lot of the time, Blade Bias is me talking about my opinions and asking you guys questions, asking you guys your opinion on bushings versus bearings, asking you what I missed. But what if we flipped the script, name foreshadowing there for you, and you guys asked me stuff instead? And this is stuff that you guys do often. I'll get questions in the comments about certain things. But I figured, what if we turn that into a more interactive experience that actually happens a little bit more frequently than just me once a week when I scroll through my comments and actually reply to them? What if we turn it into a video series that acts as a sort of Q&A? Now, I'm just going to say it right now. There's a lot of questions that I'm just not going to answer. I'm not going to tell you what you should get. I'm not going to tell you the best ballad song for a price range. If you want me to answer one of those questions, it's going to have to be something that A, I don't hear every 5 seconds, and B, is something that's actually interesting that I can turn into a talking point that other people might benefit from. But where this all started was the video that I did about the finals of Nibali's, and a few people asked me questions in those comments, so I figured, why not go through them and actually answer some of them on video, and then you guys can leave more questions in the comments of this video that I can then respond to in the next one. And I'm going to call it Flip the Script, because that's exactly what we're doing. I'm going to flip with no script. But I'm also going to flip the script and ask you things instead, and you ask me things instead of me asking you things. So without further ado, let's flip the script. It's so friggin' corny. All right. Bonus Tried on the last video said you could do a bad ballad song tutorial series. No, I'm not entirely sure if you mean like bad ballad song tutorial series in reference to the fact that I always say that I'm bad at teaching. But for all of the people, because this is probably one of the number one requests that I hear in the comments section whenever I ask for video ideas, is tutorial this, tutorial that. Maybe there will come a day where I actually try out a tutorial series or doing a tutorial or something like that. For right now, I try to keep tutorials to things that really, don't exist. Things like my fan to choker fan. You don't really see other people doing it as much as I do it, and you also don't see people making tutorials for it as far as I'm aware, so I just threw one together. But I really don't enjoy tutorials at all. I don't really use them anymore. I prefer to look at a clip, slow it down, and try and figure it out for myself, but I also just am terrible at explaining tricks in that way. I'm not a good enough flipper to articulate how you can move your fingers around to do a trick that you want to do. I am far better at explaining the mechanics of a ballad song that lead you to enjoy flipping it, not enjoy flipping it, why it's good for certain tricks, stuff like that. But actually doing the tricks, that's where I try and leave it to other people. You got people like Big Flips, which people really respect. And I just don't feel that I'm equipped enough to do anything like that. So I just don't. I try and stay out of things like that where it just doesn't feel like it's my wheelhouse. So I know that might be disappointing, but Hawkwig, hell of a name, said a few things. He actually left a very long comment, and this was kind of the comment that made me realize that this is something that people might want to see, me answering questions of people in a video format like this. So I'm not going to answer everything here, but he has 4 main questions. Number one, how does sitting while flipping improve your technique, and why does it often feel harder than flipping while standing? The whole thing with flipping while sitting, at least in my opinion, is when I'm sitting down, I am confined. Whether I have arms on my chair or not, I can only move so far, and my hands can really only move in this range in front of me before it becomes uncomfortable to flip. When I'm standing up, I can turn, I can step, I can do whatever I need to keep a trick combo going because I'm able to move my body to generate momentum. I'm able to swing my arm to generate momentum. Whereas when I'm sitting down, a lot of the times you're resting your elbow and your hand is locked in a certain position. I mean, look at my arm is barely moving here when I flip. Compared to when I stand up, my arm moves quite a bit more because I have to move my arm a lot more to generate more momentum when I'm standing up. So when you're sitting down, not only are you confined to a specific space that you're sitting in, but you also don't have the freedom to kind of swing your arms as much as you normally do, especially if you're someone who leans back and puts their arm on, rests their arm on a chair rest or something like that. So basically, what sitting while flipping does, you're also much more confined in space. I don't have this whole giant area in front of me to move up and down when I flip. I have to keep things above the knee but below my face, which is a far more difficult window to flip in for some people. But I found that it can be hugely effective into increasing your technique because, like I said, the less that you move your arms to generate momentum, generally speaking, the better of a flipper you are. If you're able to do all of these tricks without pivoting your elbow, it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable for the beginning of it, but it's going to mean that you have a far better understanding of what generates momentum because you're not swinging your elbow around. You're able to generate that momentum with just your wrist. And it's just a higher level of flipping because you are forcing yourself to sit. It's a very different dynamic as well. It's kind of like flipping in your opposite hand, where you're forcing yourself to flip in alternative conditions that sort of make your mistakes come through and rise to the surface. At least that's what I've found. Flipping while sitting is very difficult, but once you get it down, it can be hugely helpful into helping you realize what mistakes you're making, specifically with how you're generating your momentum in order to do the tricks that you want to do, as well as controlling the balisong well enough to keep it within that window that you can flip in. Number 2, why aren't G10 balisongs like the Nautilus or Rep style as popular or affordable as aluminum ones? The Refault is an exception, but in general, G10 seems underrepresented. That's a pretty simple one. And by the way, if I ever make a mistake in any of these, feel free, if you feel you have more knowledge on a certain topic, add in the comments. Go ahead, help people. The whole point of this series is to hopefully get information out there rather than, you know, like, oh gosh, what am I trying to say? This is the first time I'm genuinely struggling on what to say. The whole idea of this is to get info out there, figure out what you guys want to see, and give you the info that you want, rather than you just hoping that I talk about something in a video that doesn't have anything to do with what you're looking for, I guess. I don't really know. But G10 is underrepresented because G10 is difficult to do. When you add G10 scales, that's not only more machine time, that you have to machine a different material than the underlying area. Let's take something like the Reverie, for example. You only have to have a machine that cuts out this aluminum. Whereas a G10 model, not only do you have to have another machine, another part of the process that's cutting out G10, it's also increasing the assembly time, which is increasing the cost. So generally, G10 is not only harder to do, but it's also increasing the amount of assembly that needs to go on, which is increasing the cost, which is a lot of the time why you'll see something like the Nautilus, which specs-wise isn't the best balisong out there, going for something like $270, which is, you know, like a Kraken price, because it just takes a while to add that G10 to the process of making an already difficult to make aluminum balisong. And the reason the Refault is so good at that is because it's utilizing Chinese manufacturing. A lot of the really cheap G10 balisongs are Chinese made, rather than something like the Replicant, the Nautilus, things like that, which are made in America. And that machine time and that assembly time increases the cost, increases the complexity, which also increases the cost. And that's kind of why companies stay away from it. And a lot of the more budget-oriented things, Balisong, sorry, don't utilize G10 whatsoever. Do you see Blade Show expanding outside of the US anytime soon? Maybe to Canada or Europe? No, because laws. I mean, that's a pretty simple one. Do you think competitive flipping will get more exposure in the coming years beyond just the Blade Show competition? I mean, I hope it does. I have personally been a part of a few conversations between people and like ideas that have tried to get off the ground of creating a more competitive Balisong focused competition like this. And you see the effects of this somewhat in online spaces. You have different companies doing comps online. It's a tough one. It's kind of along the vein of, do I think the Balisong community is going to get more popular in general in the coming years? My general stance is that we had our best shot a few years ago. I mean, we had people like PewDiePie reacting to our competitions, and ultimately the general public kind of sees that and goes, oh, that's kind of cringe, but kind of cool, and then they move on with their day. Same thing with most other skill toys. The thing with most other skill toys is they're not also illegal. Like, I can bring a Rubik's Cube into Germany or Canada or the EU and not have to worry about the laws that are in place that may forbid me from doing exactly that. So as far as will it become more popular, I'm sure it will, but especially when you're talking about the expansion of Blade Show, legality is always going to be a thing that people come into. And you might even say, well, what about trainers? The problem with trainers is you're flipping them and no one can really tell that it isn't a knife. People don't have that experience yet. So there's going to have to be a lot of work in the coming years and honestly decades into educating people that trainers exist and are not harmful in the same way that a live blade can be. And also on our end, accepting trainers far more than we currently do, because right now you're telling me you want the hobby to expand into these other countries, but half of the members of the Balisong community will ridicule someone just for flipping a trainer. And that is just something that is prohibitive to the expanse of a hobby like this. If I look at Transformers or something like that, if you had people looking at me and saying, you're buying figures from the Bumblebee movie, that's stupid. It's going to stop people from coming in and wanting to get interested in that, in which otherwise, because the Bumblebee movie, this Optimus Prime from the Bumblebee movie is how I got back into collecting Transformers. If people ridiculed me for buying that, then I never would have gotten into it any more than I did, and it would have stopped that dead in its tracks. So I think a lot of work needs to be done both legally and culturally within the Balisong community before we can really start expanding like that. And finally, great comment, by the way. Great questions here. I'd be interested in a discussion on customizing Balisongs. It's something that I've done before. That is a question that I am not really equipped to handle because I don't have the know-how into machining all of this stuff and any of that. But if you want more info into the process of designing and manufacturing a Balisong, particularly a custom design, please, I implore you, go check out Contraption Collection on YouTube. He has chronicled basically as much as possibly will ever exist of creating his own custom, unique Balisong design from scratch and all of the challenges that came along with that. But as far as that, it would be really cool to see a kind of YouTuber that approaches content creation from the angle of creating a Balisong, you know? Someone who, unlike me, who has more experience flipping and reviewing these Balisongs, someone who has an interest and a genuine experience in both creating and manufacturing these Balisongs. I think that would be a unique viewpoint to hear from. Even just someone small doing things like speed channels or something like that, I think it would be really cool to hear from because there's a lot of work that goes into that I don't think people are aware of or that they think about. But excellent comment, and I think that is pretty much it. Koyat said, explain complex moves and their physics principles. I don't even know where to begin with that comment. But yeah, where and when is Blade Show? How do you get the information about it? Google. But that's kind of an example of a question that I'd probably ignore in the comments of this video. Anything that you can really solve super easily with Google. How much is the cheese? What is, like, where is Blade Show? When is Blade Show? Like, unless I see a ton of people asking that, and I think it would be beneficial for me to answer that in a video that people will watch, I'm probably going to skip it. And for right now, I'm just going to ignore everyone asking, what would you recommend? I have a whole document linked in the description of my recommendations. There's really no reason for me to go into it. But here's an example of something that might get into a video like that. What if someone says, hey, I just got into the hobby. I have a Vulp. I really like doing chaplains and rollovers, but the Vulp isn't very good at that. What would you recommend? I'm looking at the Orion, the Cheese, and the Thomas Baikal. And I would say, hey, the Cheese has the most handle bias, at least in my opinion, of those things that you mentioned. And handle bias is going to help improve the performance of your balisong on those tricks that you enjoy doing. So I personally would go with the Cheese. Stuff like that. Things that require a little bit more of a nuanced explanation, but still do require an explanation rather than just what's better, Reverie or Cheese, which is an impossible question to answer in and of itself. So, that being said, I think that is pretty much it for the comments on that video. Let me know what you think of this idea. Let me know how often you would like to see something like this, or if you would even like to see something like this again. I am currently at Blade Show, so not going to be able to do anything for at least the next week or two, but we will get to it when we get to it. Please leave some questions in the comments below that you want to see the next time that we flip the script. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Later.